Hello friends, this is Worm, and I just told the stream about this, but you probably noticed I don't have a face cam on right now. Reason why, I've got a new monitor that I just set up, and I have not set up my um, camera and my light and stuff. So I mean, my camera is set up, but my light is not, and so like if I turn my face cam on, look, I'll turn it on real quick so you can see. Oh, actually, that doesn't look too bad. That's just from the screen, but I think like if I close, like yeah, if I'm tabbing through stuff, it's gonna like kind of do all that, which I'd rather not have that kind of craziness going on with my face. So I'm just gonna keep the face cam off for now. But with that being said, we're gonna talk about all of the exotic power weapons in the game, talk about their PvE rating and their PvP ratings, and just kind of give a general overview of them. Now, one thing I will say about these weapons, for PvP ratings, I'm going to be looking at a strictly like heavy by heavy basis, okay? Because I think that in many instances, most players are probably using an exotic primary in their loadouts. But the way I'm looking at this is if you have two god tier legendaries, let's say you have Rose and I don't know, a god roll Matador 64 or a god roll Prophet of Doom, obviously your heavy slot is going to be open to an exotic. That's the way we're going to be rating these, because again, like heavy weapons, they don't see a whole lot of usage in PvP. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Prospector first. Now the Prospector recently got a rework. Basically it shoots grenades at a high rate of fire that will detonate and then break off into smaller grenades. I believe 3 smaller grenades. It also up here does fire in full auto, which honestly I think this is kind of a pointless perk now because you have the ability to turn on full auto, but you know what, to each their own. The catalyst does give it chain reaction as well. This weapon is a pretty, I mean, it's an okay option. Okay, I want to be clear, I've used it once since it's got its update with this recent season launch, but this weapon, it's never been crazy good at things like DPS. Also, something to note, it does burn enemies, like whenever you deal damage to them. Even though it's arc damage, it does have like a burn effect. It's not scorch, it is a unique burn effect. But really, this thing did get a substantial update, and it's substantially better than what it was, because what you can use it for now is a little bit of DPS. Like if you're using it on an enemy that is larger and, you know, doesn't move around a whole lot, for example, or I'm sorry, not for example, or another example would be like Rainix, I'm sorry, from the new dungeon. This would be a decent option, not the best option, but a decent option for DPS, because each of those grenades will deal impact damage, and then they'll explode into smaller sub munitions that will also explode and deal additional damage. It also has a 6-round magazine, which I think it's actually an 8-round magazine. I think it says 6 down here, but I think it's actually 8 rounds, but that might have been one of the changes they made. I don't really remember. But for PvE, I'm going to give this thing right now probably a 3 out of 5, because it's middle of the line. It's not bad. It's not the best. It's not great by any means. There are scenarios where it's going to excel, and there are scenarios where it's not really going to excel. And that's kind of where the 3 that's where the 3 out of 5 rating really comes from. Now in PvP, this is probably going to get like a 1 out of 5. I mean, in PvP, this is not really a good weapon. It's not really a strong option. Its blast radius, of course, is very low. And yes, those sub-munitions can get kills, but this is not something I would recommend using in PvP, especially because you're only going to get 3 grenades, and it doesn't have proxy grenades. And you know, proximity grenades is definitely a much more sought-after option. So I'm going to say a 2 out of 5, not a 1 out of 5, because it's not like a horrible, awful weapon that you should absolutely not use in PvP whatsoever. But there's just much better options that you can use. So yeah, 3 out of 5 PvE, 2 out of 5 PvP. Let's move on to Wardcliff Coil. Wardcliff Coil, okay, this weapon basically fires, I think it's 8. I think it's 8 mini rockets at a time, which is a crazy number of rockets. It also, whenever you pick up ammo, it automatically reloads it, which that's kind of a minor feature. And then the catalyst just makes it where the tracking projectiles track a little bit stronger. Yes, this weapon does have tracking. The tracking is nothing crazy. It's nothing insane. You know, it's not going to like lock on to enemies miles away, but enemies that are close to you, it will automatically lock on and travel towards them. And like I said, it's firing 8 rockets at a time. I think it's 8. I could be mistaken that, but it's firing 8 rockets at a time. It will deal a massive amount of damage to, you know, small tier enemies. But one of the things about this weapon that really holds it back is the damage that it deals to bosses is reduced by like 80%, which is absolutely ridiculous. Also, it has this it has extended mag. I don't know why, but yeah, it has extended mag on it. But with that being said, this weapon, it really struggles to find a place in boss fights, with the exception of one, and we will talk about that one. But it finds a struggle to, like, it struggles to find itself in a place for a boss fight, because like I said, the rockets are reduced, like the damage from the rockets are reduced by 80%. Now, granted, it's firing 8 of those rockets at a time, which is I mean, that's a lot of rockets to be shooting, but when they're dealing 80% less damage, like, yes, this is dealing big chunk damage to bosses, but I think at the end of the day, like, for what you're using rocket launchers for, which is boss damage or high health target damage, it's not really cutting it. Now, there is one exception to this, and that one exception is Rainix in the Vespers Host Dungeon. For whatever reason, when Rainix is split apart into smaller servitors, they are not classed as a boss. They're classed as a minor enemy. So this deals full damage to each of those enemies. This thing pumps out an insane amount of damage to Rainix, and that's really the only place I would recommend using this. PvE, I'm gonna say it's like a 2 out of 5. Like, again, you're not using a rocket launcher to ad clear, even though it has good ad clear potential. Like, most of our primaries and most of our special weapons can do that pretty decent. So yeah, it's like a 2 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, this is, if you're on a close range map, if you're on a place where there's not a lot of long range areas, this can be very, very good. Of course, this is, you know, but considering all maps and everything, I would say this is probably like a 3 out of 5 in PvP. It will hit targets if you're within the range of those targets. Like, if a target is within range of your attack, they will die, because the little rockets will track towards them. The little rockets, of course, deal standard rocket damage. You can get some multi-kills with this, but again, enemies have to be very close. These rockets don't travel very far outside of their, you know, their intended range. Sorry, I'm trying to stay hydrated. But yeah, I'd say a comfortable 3 out of 5 in PvP for your exotics, slot. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is Tractor Cannon. And Tractor Cannon is a really fun weapon. It's basically a shotgun, as we can see here, but what it does is it fires a pulse that will knock enemies away if they're appropriate size. Like, you can't knock a boss back, you can't knock champions back, but if you have majors and minors, it will actually push them away from you. Okay, so it's got that you know, that repulsor functionality in it, which is really fun. But really, where this weapon's strength comes from is in its utility, because when you shoot an enemy with this weapon, number one, they're suppressed, so it's already strong against unstoppable champions, but also they take 35% more damage. They receive a 35% debuff to you know, so they take 35% more damage. This is really, really good. Like, Tractor Cannon is a really solid option for any sort of damage phase where you can reach the boss that you're trying to shoot at. Like, maybe like the Witness, for example, is a bad example of Tractor Cannon usage, because you can't get close enough to the Witness and survive to debuff it. But if you're looking at a boss where you can get pretty close to, Tractor Cannon is going to do work for you and your team. It's going to debuff the boss by a lot. And really, I would say Tractor Cannon is probably like, I would say Tractor Cannon, all things considered, is probably a 4 out of 5 in PvP. And again, in PvE, again, the reason it's not a 5 out of 5 is because there are instances where you can't reach the boss, and in those cases, Tractor Cannon is going to be useless. But in most raid scenarios, most dungeon scenarios, you can reach the boss you're trying to shoot at, and you can keep them debuffed. Then you can pair Tractor Cannon with something like Supremacy with Rewind Rounds Bait and Switch, and still output a ton of damage. It also has a perk here where when you damage an enemy, it increases your movement speed. Basically gives you tier 10 mobility, so you can walk really, really fast. And then its catalyst down here just increases its magazine size to 7 and gives it more ammo and reserves. But this weapon is very good. Now, the one thing about this weapon that I would say is another reason why it doesn't get a 5 out of 5 is because it makes no sense to have more than one of these on your team at a time. So if you've got a guy who's a Tractor Cannon addict, there's no point in having you use tractor cannon as well. There's no point in having anybody else use tractor cannon. Similar to Divinity, which we talked about in the energy weapon video, there's no point in having multiple people with this weapon equipped at a time, because you're using this for its utility functionality, right? You're not using it for damage. You're not using it to knock enemies off the map. Even though it's fun to do that, you're really using it for that utility of either stunning unstoppable champions or debuffing enemies so that you can deal more damage to them. But still, 4 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, I'll say this, in PvP, I would say this is like 3 out of 5. Okay, this is basically just a glorified shotgun in PvP. Although I will say it does have an incredible fun factor of knocking somebody off the map if you get close enough that you can damage them. And remember, damaging an enemy is what will knock them back. Okay, you don't have to get the kill to send them off. Like, if they are within the range, they will get knocked back, and the closer they are, the further they'll get knocked back. But it's so fun to see guardians fly off the map because you boop them with tractor cannon. But really, tractor cannon, again, it's a shotgun. You can just equip a shotgun if you're worried about using a shotgun. And honestly, there are legendary shotguns that are much better than tractor cannon. I would say honestly, it's probably a 2 out of 5 in PvP. Again, it's got a little bit more range, a little bit more utility than a standard shotgun, but most players are running around with legendary shotguns, so I would use something else. It's not getting a 1 out of 5 because it does have some value. For example, if you like using snipers, you know, a sniper and a sidearm, you can pick up heavy, and you do have an emergency button in your back pocket. But that's tractor cannon, a 2 out of 5 PvE, 4 out of 5 PvE. I'm sorry, 4 out of 5 PvE, 2 out of 5 PvP. Let's go to the next one. Legend of Acrius. And let me grab a drink before we talk about this one real quick. All right. Now, Legend of Acrius. This is a very old weapon. This was the original Destiny 2 raid weapon. Basically, it's a shotgun. It says it has 4 rounds. It only has 2 rounds in the magazine. That's something very important to point out. Also, its reload speed, handling are very low. But basically, this damage, this is another exotic shotgun. And the thing that makes this unique is that the damage that it actually deals is insanely high. Okay, and I don't know how many pellets it fires, but it fires a bunch of pellets, more than your standard shotgun, and they deal an absolute massive amount of damage that actually has really decent range. It also has this perk here, Long March, which you can detect enemies on your radar from further away. This needs an update, to be completely honest. This is such a not very good perk. And then its Catalyst will actually increase its magazine size to 6, and it will increase its reload speed. I want to say it maxes its reload speed out. But yeah, in PvE, let's talk about PvE first. I would say this weapon is probably like a 3 out of 5. It's a heavy hitter. Okay, there's no doubt about that. Against champions, you know, if you stun, say, a barrier champion or something, and you run up to him with this weapon, it is going to deal a massive amount of damage, even without the Catalyst. Now, the Catalyst, which we'll talk about in just a second, makes it a little bit better. But really, where this weapon is going to struggle is when it comes to those ranges, okay? Because its range is hard capped at like 7.5 meters, I think, or maybe 7 meters. Once you go beyond that, the bullets literally don't even deal damage. Okay, so it's not like other shotguns where, you know, oh, you'll deal like, you know, 1 or 2 damage. Like, this deals 0 damage outside of its effective range, but within its effective range, it's dealing almost max damage all the way up until that point, which does make it it makes it a good weapon. Now, the Catalyst for this thing, unfortunately, is something I'm going to say it's a must to make this weapon good, because like I said, it increases its magazine from 2 rounds up to 6 rounds, which basically triples the magazine, which is fantastic. It also gives it massive reload speed bump. And most importantly, the Catalyst also gives it the perk Trench Barrel. And Trench Barrel is a very important PvE shotgun perk, which states that when you deal damage with a melee, your next 3 shots, or until the timer runs out, you have more damage with this weapon. So Trench Barrel is a must. You run up there, you punch an enemy, you get, you know, 1, 2, maybe even 3 shots off on them, and they're going to be taking a ton of damage. 3 out of 5 in PvE, because most, like, in terms of boss damage encounters, which heavy weapons are typically used for boss damage, you're not going to be close enough to be using this shotgun. But when you're up against, say, like Rolk, for example, Rolk, you can get close enough to Rolk to use a shotgun. This weapon is it's definitely a competitive option. Like, it's may not be the absolute best, but it's easy, free damage. I mean, it's a shotgun, right? Like, shotguns are so easy to use, which makes it pretty good. Again, in PvE, so 3 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP activities, I'm going to say this is I'm gonna say this is a 1 out of 5, and the reason being, well, probably 2 out of 5. We'll rate it the same as Tractor Cannon, 2 out of 5. Reason being is because you're gonna one-shot kill somebody in that 7.5 meter range, but outside of that, it's gonna do absolutely nothing to them. It doesn't have that knockback effect, but where Tractor Cannon lacks, you know, in its damage because of that knockback effect, this thing just makes up for, like, it's all damage. It's a ton of damage that this can put out, and basically any guardian that's within your range is going to be eviscerated by this weapon. So I can't safely rate it like a 1 out of 5 in PvP, but I think 2 out of 5 is where it's at. Again, you can use any other shotgun to a similar effect, not quite as good as this one, but they're also special ammo. So that's Legend of Acrius. Let's move on. D.A.R.C. D.A.R.C. This is a 1 out of 5 in both PvE and PvP. Let's talk about why. First of all, its exotic perk is basically you aim at an enemy for a short duration and you get some stats on that enemy. Basically, this is really only used for damage testing, and you can see down here it shows you the health that a target has, and other critical information. Really, it's just the health that an enemy has and like how far away they are, and that's why it's used for damage testing, because you can get, you know, say you want to test at 35 meters, you can use D.A.R.C. to see 35 meters away. Its other perk here does give it some subclass energy. That subclass energy is with Arc, of course. When personal assistance active, you get, you know, you get the enhanced, what's it called? Enhanced target acquisition. You deal, it says significantly more precision damage. It's not significantly, like significantly makes it sound like it's dealing double. It doesn't deal that much. Like it deals like, I think at most maybe 50% more damage, which is a lot, but this is a 140 sniper, and I mean, it hits similar to a 140 sniper. Like this is very low DPS. It's a strange weapon because, you know, you have to aim down sights, you have to lock on target for a second. It just doesn't really seem like a weapon that has any place, I guess, in the current meta. Now, there was a time period long ago in Scourge of the Past raid where this thing actually did have some viability against the final boss, just because of, you know, the setting of that encounter and stuff. But really, this is something, it's very weak in PvE. Everything, literally any other option is going to be better than this. Like you can put on, like I said, like a 140 supremacy, and you're going to do better than you will with D.A.R.C., which is really kind of sad, if we're being honest. But yeah, 1 out of 5 PvE. In PvP, kind of the same boat. I mean, yeah, you can use, like, the extra aim assistance is nice. Like I think it gives it 100 aim assistance, but there are so many snipers that you can already get to 100 aim assistance, or close enough to 100 aim assistance that it's not going to matter. You know, through you know, targeting adjuster mods and through their base stats, through perks like opening shot, stuff like that. So D.A.R.C. is a 1 out of 5 in PvP and PvE. The Colony. This is a fun weapon. Basically, this weapon, instead of shooting standard grenades, this weapon shoots little robots that will land on the environment and track down enemies and blow up on them. And then enemies that are killed by the Colony's shots here will spawn more robots to go off and kill something. Now, the unfortunate thing about this is they don't continuously spawn robots forever. I wish, whenever they talked about the change for this, I was really hoping that's how it would be, that we would be able to shoot this thing, one robot would be able to split into another robot, just constantly chained together. It doesn't work like that, but you know, I guess it can't be that mad. It also has what's it called, auto-loading holster for its perk. I mean, it says serve the colony. It's just auto-loading holster basically. This in PvE, I'll say it's like a 2 out of 5 in PvE. Like its fun factor is definitely there. It's a very fun weapon to use, but at the same time, it's not going to be doing any crazy damage. The little robots are kind of wonky because sometimes like they'll just like run off and run up a wall and stuff and not really track anything. Which makes it really hard to recommend using this weapon. If those robots tracked a little bit more aggressively, I think I could see myself recommending this weapon more than what I do currently. But yeah, it does have a catalyst. I believe the catalyst just increases its reserves, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it's like a 2 out of 5 in PvE activities. In PvP, I would say it has a little bit more utility because you can shoot the robots into like a room with enemies and they will seek out the enemies. It's a 1 out of 5 though, because those robots don't actually kill guardians. Or I think hold on. I think they do kill guardians as long as they detonate literally right on top of them. but anybody who hears it, you know, this weapon being fired, which this weapon has a very unique sound effect when it's fired, they're going to know to look out for the little robots. And again, those robots can be really wonky sometimes. So, you know, you might shoot it directly at an enemy, it lands right in front of them, and that robot might just run straight, and the enemy might just strafe out of the way, and the robot runs straight and goes up the wall, goes off and does its own thing. So, yeah, it's a 1 out of 5 in PvE, in PvP, and no, I'm gonna move it down to 1 out of 5 in PvE and PvP both. It's just, yeah, it's difficult to recommend this weapon. Worldline Zero. This is one we talked about in our video the other day. But this one, basically, after sprinting for a little bit, you will activate this perk called Tesseract. Then you can jump forward and basically teleport forward to do an attack that deals a pretty substantial amount of damage. Then you can activate it a second time and do it again. Sorry, hydrating. But you can do it twice. This weapon does have decent damage output. Like, you can, it's not the worst damage. It's more than a whirlwind, or a whirlwind blade. I'm sorry, a vortex frame sword. It's more than a vortex frame sword because you have basically 2 of those attacks, and I think the attacks do a little bit more damage than a standard vortex frame. But really, the problem with this weapon is if you're using it against a, like, you know, a burst thing, like a champion, for example, you need to use it for burst. Like, you've got to put yourself at risk. It's still a sword, you know, and in content where it's important to stay away from the enemies, it's tough to recommend this. It has Assassin's Blade and Tireless Blade, which is really unique because I think this is the only sword in the game that gets 2 different blade perks, which is cool. In PvE, I'm going to say this is probably like a 2 out of 5. Again, it can be used in some like burst damage scenarios, but it's really not. There's just better options like Lament, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It would be a better option. And in PvP, actually, I would rate this a little bit higher in PvP. I would say this is probably a 3 out of 5, maybe teetering on a 4 out of 5 in PvP, because while you're sprinting, you have Tesseract active. You can, once you like see an enemy, like you can click that button and it instantly teleports you to that enemy, and that enemy is going to be gone. All right, they're going to die like instantly. So there is a little bit more utility. And in terms of swords, I would say this is the second best sword in the game, right next to Black Talon. Again, we'll talk about Black Talon a little bit. So I would say a 3 out of 5, maybe a 4 out of 5 in PvP. I would say, yeah, I'll say 4 out of 5 in PvP. No, 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 PvP, 2 out of 5 PvE. Moving on. Sleeper Simulant. This weapon is a very cool weapon. Basically, this was the original linear fusion rifle of Destiny. Its perk just shoots a big freaking laser. Just like one single laser beam shot, and it will refract off hard surfaces. Basically, you shoot a laser. If it hits a hard surface, which means the environment, so a wall, a piece of cover, the floor, it will refract into 5 different lasers. But the cool part about this, bosses also count as hard surfaces. So if you shoot at a boss, it will go through that boss and it will refract into 5 different laser beams, which is really, really neat. That's basically all this weapon has. It has moving target up here as well, and then the catalyst does reduce its charge time. As you see, it takes more than a second to charge this up. In PvE activities, though, this thing is 4 out of 5. This thing is incredible. This is never ever a bad option to use in like DPS phases. Okay, like, you know, against the Witness, against, you know, any boss that you can hit a crit on, this weapon is never a bad option, provided you have the catalyst. And again, the catalyst is what's holding it back a little bit from being a 5 out of 5. Because the catalyst, if you don't have the catalyst, like, there's just better options. Like, use Whisper, use something else besides this weapon. But once you do get the catalyst, which you get through just playing the game pretty normal, and you get it leveled up, you unlock it, like, this thing is a monster. 4 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, I would probably say this is also a 4 out of 5. That laser will one-shot kill people to the body, which is really awesome. And the refracted lasers can also kill multiple guardians. I wouldn't rely too much on the refracted lasers for anything, okay? Because they're kind of all off doing their own thing, basically. But it's going to one-shot any guardian to the body. And like I said, like, once you get the charge time down to, I think, 724 is the charge time of it. Maybe it's 774. It makes it much more manageable. So in PvP, definitely not a bad option. It's got decent aim assistance. 57 plus moving target gives it 67 aim assistance. Not difficult to hit shots. Plus, it's a linear fusion rifle. Linear fusion rifles typically aren't too bad to hit shots with in the Crucible, but this is a one-shot Guardians to the body. So I'd say it's probably like a 4 out of 5 in PvE activities as well. And it does have infinite range. So, if you are across the map on Eternity and, you're aiming its down sights and you start charging it up and an enemy just walks in front of that laser, they're going to die. Here's a fun fact about this weapon. Back in Destiny 1, instead of refracting on a hard surface, the way this perk worked is it would bounce off hard surfaces, and it would bounce 5 times. So you would shoot like a boss or something, and it would randomly bounce around the room 5 times, which was incredible. Super, super powerful, but it also get you killed frequently. But really, the fun factor came in the King's Fall raid in Destiny 1, because Oryx, final boss, his chest cavity was considered a hard surface. So you could shoot at a certain angle, you could shoot Sleeper Simulant into his chest, and it would ricochet off the sides and hit his heart multiple times, dealing a substantial amount of damage. That's just a fun fact. It's not the case in D2 anymore, but yeah. Oh, what did I say for this one? 4 out of 5 in both PvE and PvP. Whisper of the Worm. This is a crafted weapon as well as a non-crafted. Well, it's crafted weapon, and it comes with perk White Nail. This was a Destiny 1 perk. I won't explain that weapon, but anyways, basically, when you're landing shots, it's going to refill the magazine. So if you hit 3 precision shots, it's going to refill the magazine completely, effectively giving you a infinite, or a never having to, like a never loading sniper. As long as you can hit 3 shots, like you'll never have to reload the sniper, which means it is very good in extended damage phases. Okay, you can aim down sights, you can shoot, as long as you're hitting crits against like the Witness, for example, like it's going to deal a substantial amount of damage, which is really awesome. It also will, if I'm not mistaken, it takes 1 ammo from reserves and it will grant you 1 ammo. So you can really extend your ammo out for long periods of time. Where does this struggle? Anything that's not DPS related. So against any ads or anything, this thing's going to struggle. I would say for boss damage though, which is primarily what heavies are used for in PvE, this weapon gets a I'm gonna say it's a 5 out of 5 in DPS phases. No, let's do a 4 out of 5. It's a 5 out of 5 in DPS, but it struggles anywhere else besides DPS, so it's gonna get a 4 out of 5. But really, we can't underestimate how much damage this weapon is going to deal to bosses, because it deals a substantial amount of sustained damage. And then of course the catalyst here just increases it even more. It gives it the perk Whispered Breathing, which after you aim down sights for a little bit, it deals even more precision damage. And in PvP, is 1 out of 5. Just, there's way better snipers. Okay, this cannot one-shot to the body. If it could one-shot to the body, I would give it a higher score, but it cannot one-shot to the body in the Crucible without like being radiant or something like that. So yeah, 1 out of 5 in PvE, 4 out of 5. 1 out of 5 in PvP, 4 out of 5 in PvE. My goodness, I'm gonna get those two confused a lot. 1,000 Voices. This is the Last Wish exotic. The exotic that comes from the Last Wish raid. It comes with the perk Ahamkar's Eye. This basically, when you charge it up, it's a fusion rifle. Notice up here, when you charge it up, it fires a giant beam that deals a ton of damage, and then that beam also explodes. Like everywhere it hits will also explode, and it will scorch targets. This thing does a lot of damage. It does a lot of damage. It also has the built-in ignitions through scorching that you can have on top of it. I would say for PvE activities, 4 out of 5. Again, it's hard. No, you know what? I'm gonna jump ship here. I'm gonna say it's a 5 out of 5, because on top of having really good boss damage potential, it also has the ability to clear ads like crazy. The one risk you play when using with this weapon is killing yourself, because that laser beam is no joke. Like if you are within like 6 meters of that one of those explosions, like you're going to take a substantial amount of damage. It is easy to accidentally kill yourself with this weapon, but still the damage cannot be understated. Hold on. The damage cannot be understated, because this thing, it deals scorch damage, it deals the laser beam damage, it deals the explosive damage that you actually fire from this, but also because it's a fusion rifle, it does not hit crits. And because it doesn't hit crits, you can use this on any boss that you want, and it will still be a good option because you don't have to worry about hitting crits. You know, so if it's a boss that doesn't have an easily accessible crit spot, like a brig or something like that, it's still going to do a ton of damage to that boss, still cause ignitions and scorch and all that stuff. So I would say this is a 5 out of 5 in PvE activities. I do want to clarify, it's not the highest damage option in the game. Like, there are definitely higher damage potential. Like, Whisper actually probably has higher damage potential, but this thing's ease of use outclasses Whisper, which is why I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 in PvE. Plus, of course, it has add clear potential. And in PvP, it's like I would say it's probably a 3 out of 5. It's a middle of the pack kind of thing. Like, the charge time, very slow, 1000. It takes a second to charge it up. But again, like, you just look at enemies and just swipe this over them. Like, you don't even have to like beam them down. Like, you just swipe it over them and they will die. You can get some great multi-kills with this weapon. But yeah, 3 out of 5 PvP, 5 out of 5 PvE. Two-tailed fox. This weapon is another, or I'm sorry, this one came with Forsaken. I thought this came with the base game. Basically, at base, this shoots 2 rockets, a solar and a void rocket. The solar rocket will scorch targets. The void rockets will suppress targets. Suppress targets. And yes, it does have that synergy with each of the respected subclasses. Then the catalyst will actually add a 3rd rocket that will also jolt enemies. Now, you might think that this thing is insane because it's firing 3 tracking rockets at once. Unfortunately, it's not, because each of these rockets deals like a 1/3 of a standard rocket. So basically, you're firing like rockets that are dealing normal damage. They just have that added functionality of having subclass synergy. Let me get a drink. But yeah, that subclass synergy, it's nice, but it's not a game changer. This isn't going to be putting out a ton of damage. You can use this to suppress overload champions as well as overload as well as unstoppable champions, because suppress will stagger unstoppable champions, and then jolt will stagger overload champions. It doesn't have anything for barrier, unfortunately, but yeah, I would say this is like a 2 out of 5 in PvE. It's not that good. Like, there are legendary rocket launchers that will, like with bait and switch, that will have more damage associated with them. Like I said, the only thing this gets a leg up on is the fact that it has the subclass synergy, and really that's not a make or break kind of thing. Now in PvP, it's a 1 out of 5. It doesn't have anything that another rocket launcher wouldn't do. The rockets can one-shot in PvP, which is really nice, like just 1 rocket, but at the same time, like, it doesn't have, like, it's a rocket launcher. Like, you're not, just use a legendary rocket launcher. Okay, 1 out of 5 PvP, 2 out of 5 PvE. Black Talon. This is where we're going to get into our first 5 out of 5 in PvP, and I want to talk about PvP first because that's where I see this weapon being the best at. Basically, when you have this weapon on, you can throw a heavy attack. It's not like a caster frame sword. It is a much faster traveling projectile. It only uses 2 ammo, and you can throw 2 of them before you run out of sword energy and have to wait for it to recharge. This thing is really good. It also has tireless blade, so every other kill you're getting gives you sword ammo. This thing is really good in PvP. It tracks it tracks crazy in PvP. Like, I've been killed by this weapon in the most ridiculous ways. Like, it'll like track like through doorways. It's not gonna track you if you run through a doorway and then run around the corner. It's not gonna make a 90-degree turn, but it has some really good tracking on it. And of course, it's a one-shot kill in the Crucible. And you're getting ammo back for it. It's a sword, so you can, if you wanted to, you could block. This is a 5 out of 5 in PvP. Now in PvE, is probably a 3 out of 5. No, I'm sorry, it's probably a 2 out of 5 in PvE activities. Reason being, the heavy attack isn't a ton of damage. You can do the same thing with legendary swords pretty much, and exotic swords that are just substantially better. So 2 out of 5 in PvE, but a 5 out of 5 in PvP. Queenbreaker. This is basically a Fallen Vandal's wire rifle. It's a linear fusion rifle. You charge it up, it shoots a shot. Its exotic perk or exoticness comes from the fact that you can change between 2 scopes. Marksman sights, which has a long range sight, slower charge but deals more damage, and then the combat sights, which has low zoom, faster charge time, That's the important things you need to know about it. You also can do hip fire grip or quick draw, which I don't, neither of these perks or anything stand out to me. But yeah, really the exoticness comes from the fact that you can change between sights, which basically changes between fire rates. This will also jolt. Oh, I'm sorry, blind. Sorry, it's blind. It'll blind targets when it hits them. So it does have that arc synergy. However, this is not a strong option. Just a tiny backstory about this weapon. This was a special ammo weapon back in Destiny 1. And it really should go back to being a special ammo weapon. But I don't think Bungie's going to do that. But with that being said, it's not that, it's a 1 out of 5 in PvE. Like, the ability to blind enemies is nice, don't get me wrong, but your other legendary fusion rifles are going to be just able to do more than this can. And so this is not a good weapon in PvP in PvE activities. And in PvP, kind of the same thing. Like, they lowered this thing's aim assistance pretty substantially from the way it was back in the day, because in Gambit this thing used to be a nightmare. But they've since changed it. It's like a 1 out of 5 in both PvE and PvP. I wouldn't recommend using it. I wouldn't recommend buying it until you have nothing else left to buy. Thunderlord. Oh, and Thunderlord is a good weapon. It used to be better, but it's still a good weapon. Basically, when you're shooting this weapon, it slowly ramps up in fire rate. So it starts at a 450, then it ramps up to 600, and then I believe it ramps up to 720 at its maximum fire rates. And while you are laying on the trigger and dealing sustained damage, it will cause lightning strikes. Also, if you get a kill, it will cause a lightning strike. But yeah, that lightning strike is just additional damage. And then it does have a catalyst. The catalyst basically will partially reload the magazine every time you cause a lightning strike, which means that you can shoot a lot longer as long as you can hit your rapid precision shots. Thunderlord is a very, very good weapon. Thunderlord is a 4 out of 5 in PvE activities. Dare I say this is a 5 out of 5? I don't know. It also has, I'm going to say, you know what, I'll say it's a 5 out of 5 in PvE activities. And the reason I say it's a 5 out of 5, number one, it has intrinsic overload champion, no sustained fire. Literally one bullet from this thing will stagger an overload, which is very nice. But also it has the ad clear. It has very strong ad clear. I mean, it's a machine gun, which machine guns are known to be ad clear weapons. But on top of that, it causes those lightning strikes. So literally like one shots from this can kill a whole group of enemies so long as they're grouped up pretty close together, which makes its ammo economy and its efficiency substantially better. In fact, you could use this for both ad clear and boss damage in many scenarios because of the fact that these lightning strikes will kill most of the enemies so long as they are grouped up. Now, in terms of boss damage, this is nowhere near the highest boss damage. There was a glitch back when when Flightfall dropped that allowed this thing to basically deal double lightning strike damage, which meant that you never had to reload the weapon, and it dealt substantially more damage, but that was since fixed. Now, it doesn't have the highest DPS, but it is still competitive DPS, and it's easy DPS. Like, literally just shoot your precision shots. If you can hit a precision shots, which, you know, most people are probably using Divinity, you will have a very large magazine, like it's with the catalyst, so long as you have the catalyst too. You'll have a very large magazine. It'll be causing lightning damage. It's shooting a lot faster. So its DPS is a lot higher than other machine guns, which is why I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 score in PvE. Like, it does everything very, very nicely. But yeah, that's Thunderlord. It also has Feeding Frenzy if you care about that. So you can reload it faster as you're getting kills. But yeah, PvP, I'm going to say this is, I'd give this like a 3 out of 5 in PvP. Like, it's, most of the kills you're going to get are going to happen before the fire rate increase kicks in. But you will, like, spawning those little lightning storms can injure other guardians, which is nice. So if they're grouped up, you know, you can kill one and then the other one's ready to clean up with just 1 or 2 shots from Thunderlord. Nothing crazy in PvP, so like a 3 out of 5. Like, it's a good option. Like, if your heavy slot is open in PvP, you could put it on and feel good about it. Anarchy thing was a monster back in the day. Basically, this is a very unique grenade launcher, because as you shoot the grenades out of it, instead of blowing up, it plants a mine. Okay, it plants a mine. Then when you shoot another grenade nearby it, it will chain lightning between those two grenades. Or scratch that. It will set up a tripwire between those two grenades. Then if an enemy walks into that tripwire, it will start shocking, like it'll start an electricity effect, and any enemies that walk into that will start taking damage from it. This thing is substantial because, of course, if you land 2 grenades on a boss, it's automatically going to start chaining that lightning. So you're looking at just free DPS while you switch to something like Supremacy or another, DPS weapon, special weapon. And it's just free damage on top of it, which is great. This weapon also, like I said, it does have the ad clear potential. Like if you know ads are about to start coming through a doorway, shoot it on either side of the doorway, and as soon as they start walking through, they're going to get deep fried, which I think is really, it makes this weapon a really fun weapon. Now in PvE, for a PvE score standpoint, I give it a 4 out of 5. Again, like it's, the utility of the arc grenades is really, really good. Like, like I said, you can set it up to chain from 2 different bosses. Like if you have 2 bosses or 2 champions close together, you can chain lightning between them and damage both of them at the same time. You can set it up in doorways or in choke points where enemies are going to be coming through, and they will take damage and get shocked as they're coming through it. Most red bars will die to this weapon. It's a lot of shock damage. It's not like Jolt. Like it's a lot of shock damage that it's dealing. It's got, like I said, like it's not the best at DPS, but allows you to use other things at the same time. So it's not like, I wouldn't say it's a bad option by any means, but 4 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, not so much. It's a 1 out of 5 in PvP. Yes, if you could get it to work so that the arc grenades are on one side of a doorway and an enemy walks through them, that enemy will die. Because it does, like I said, it's a lot of shock damage. The problem is that people will see when you're shooting Anarchy shots, and they make a very unique sound when they are fired too. So you can hear it, and you know, okay, they set up Anarchy somewhere, but then you can see the line that connects the two, the tripwire line, so to speak, that connects the 2 grenades. So if you try to set up on one side or the other of a doorway, people are going to know it's there. And so yeah, 1 out of 5 PvP, 4 out of 5 in PvE. Truth. Okay, 1 out of 5 in PvE. This thing is terrible in PvE. The only thing it has going for it is the fact that it has 3 rounds in the magazine, which it doesn't, I don't believe it says that. Yeah, it doesn't say that anywhere, but it does carry 3 rockets in the magazine, which is really nice. But at the same time, like it's doing nothing else going for it. It doesn't have any subclass synergy. It doesn't, deal crazy damage to targets or anything like that. Like this is just a tracking rocket launcher. Now in PvP, it gets a higher score. I'd say a 3 out of 5 in PvP because of this perk right here, Grenades and Horseshoes. This is the only rocket that has essentially proxy detonation. Okay, so you don't have to hit your rocket. You can aim it at a target. If they're standing, say, on a hive zone and you can't really hit them with a rocket, you can shoot them with Truth, and they'll probably die. Like if you're out in the open and you can't get behind cover, you're going to die. The Truth, you can't jump out of the way in time to not get hit by it. Like it's very strong in PvP, but still, like, there are ways to survive it. Of course, it being a tracking launcher, just break tracking line of sight, like not that hard. It doesn't track nearly as aggressively as it did in Destiny 1. I remember seeing clips in Destiny 1 where somebody would shoot Truth and a person would be able to dodge the rocket, and then it would literally go all the way up in the sky, come back around and hit that Guardian when they weren't expecting it. But it doesn't do that anymore. 3 out of 5 in PvP, 1 out of 5 in PvE. Leviathan's Breath. This is a very fun, very good bow. It's a bow, so it's got heavy weapons. So it is a heavy weapon, sorry. It does stagger unstoppable champions, and that's something that's very important to point out because you can put this weapon on and stagger unstoppable champions and save your other 2 perks for or your other 2 weapons for something else. But really, where this thing is the strongest at is in its overall damage, because the arrow that hits the target deals a pretty hefty amount of damage. Okay, like it's a strong shot. But then do this perk right here, it has an explosion that happens after it, and it does make targets volatile as well. But the volatility isn't as big of a deal as the concussive blast that comes after it. This weapon, when you hit a target with it, it will basically hit the target for max damage, and then it will explode for almost the same amount of damage. So this weapon effectively is dealing almost double damage what just one standard arrow from this thing would fire if it didn't explode, which makes it a really solid DPS option. Now, I say a really solid DPS option because, again, it's not the best in class, but if you're looking for a weapon that's very easy to use for DPS, that's easy to hit your crits on and stuff, this is the way to go. Okay, it's a bow, so it's got good aim assistance, like it's not hard to hit crits. One thing I will say, you will need the catalyst to make it more effective. The catalyst is going to give it archer's tempo, which will make it have a faster draw time once you hit a precision shot. That's kind of necessary if you want to make this thing a DPS weapon. But this is a solid middle tier option. I'd say this is a 4 out of 5 in PvE. Reason being, again, it's got great ad clear potential because that concussive blast that it creates is pretty large. Like it's not like it's not like a little explode. Like it's a pretty sizable explosion that will kill enemies. It of course deals a ton of damage. Unstoppable champions will take a ton of damage from this weapon. It's very good at killing those. I'd say 4 out of 5 in PvE. This is actually a weapon that I frequently put in my loadouts because I do have other weapons that I like that are legendaries in my kinetic and energy slots. So this is a weapon I frequently find myself using. The only place it will struggle is if there's a boss that doesn't have DPS. Doesn't have a crit spot, or if you don't have the catalyst, it's not gonna be great for DPS. But yeah, in PvP, I can't really give this a great score in PvP. It's like a 1 out of 5 in PvP. That draw time, I don't know if you see this. This is a 1.3 second draw time. Okay, so it's gonna take you that's 140 round per minute hand cannons. Like can still like 4-tap you before you can fully draw this bow. But if you fully draw the bow, it will be a one-shot kill in the Crucible. So there's that. But it's a 1 out of 5 in the Crucible. Xenophage. This is technically a machine gun, but it does not fire like a standard machine, or it doesn't perform like a standard machine gun. It's got 13 rounds in the magazine and where's the fire rate? Is a 120 round per minute. Basically, it fires really strong explosive projectiles. The key word here is explosive projectiles can't do crit damage. Okay, so in a situation where you don't have to deal crit damage, this can shine. This weapon, I feel like it really struggles right now because it's not really an ad clear weapon, but it's not a really competitive DPS weapon. Like at one point, this was a competitive DPS weapon, but Bungie changed that. And you can hold it most, like I think 30 rounds, maybe a little bit more with this weapon, but it's not that good. I'd say it's a 2 out of 5 in PvE activities. Doesn't have any anti-champion capabilities. It doesn't have any subclass synergy. Like it just kind of exists. It's just old. It needs an update. In PvP, it will one-shot people in PvP, which does make it a pretty strong PvP option. Also, it has infinite range. I know it says its range is 88. It has infinite range. So this is a pretty solid PvP option. This I'd say is like a 4 out of 5 in PvP. Hold on, I said it's a one-shot kill in the Crucible. That could have changed. At one point, it was a one-shot kill. If it's not a one-shot kill in the Crucible, then it's a 1 out of 5. If it is a one-shot kill, it's probably a 4 out of 5 in the Crucible. Deathbringer. It's a fun one. Deathbringer. Okay, so this is a rocket launcher that fires in a very unique way. It shoots a projectile, and basically after a short duration, or if you click and hold the trigger, once you release the trigger, it will explode into 5 different sub-munitions that fall to the ground. And these sub-munitions will kind of track, similar to how like a Nova bomb, a Cataclysm Nova bombs, like Seekers will track. It will do just that. Pretty comparable damage too. It also has this perk here, which the further those little void balls fall, the more damage they'll end up doing. This thing, it's a very niche weapon. I would say in PvE activities, I would rate this probably like a 3 out of 5. Like not a bad option, not the greatest option. The only place it's going to struggle is in a place where you have a low ceiling because you can't shoot it very high. The catalyst will make it where, the catalyst will just change it so that you can reach your maximum damage through this perk right here quicker, so it doesn't have to fall as far. But still, like in the boss room, for example, on Vesper's Host, this weapon's going to struggle because you can't get that rocket very high up in the air. This is one that you want to get it pretty high up in the air, but it does have a unique effect of falling. It's a 3 out of 5. Like it's not the best, but it's not the worst option. In PvP, this thing is a really slept on weapon in PvP. I see people using it sometimes, and every time I see somebody using it, they get probably like 2 kills per rocket, which is crazy. Again, these sub munitions will track targets. They track aggressively and they one-shot kill. I would say this is a 4 out of 5 in PvP activities. And if you don't agree with that, go use it. Go use it before you say, oh no, it's terrible, it's bad, blah, blah. Like, go intentionally get heavy ammo and use it, and I guarantee you'll change your mind. Heir Apparent. This is a Colossus weapon. So fire. It's a machine gun. Sorry, it's a machine gun. You click and hold the fire button to spin it up and start shooting. Basically the same principle as Sweet Business. Okay, so you hold the trigger for a second and then it starts. The only difference is that it doesn't start shooting slow and then go fast. It has to spin up, and then once it hits its max spin up speed, then it will start shooting. But the exotic flavor comes from here. When you're at full health, as you spin up the weapon, you'll get an arc shield. What does it mean by an arc shield? It literally means like an arc, like a PvE enemy arc shield comes around you, which means that if you're taking arc damage, it will break that shield much faster. It will also cause an explosion that will damage you and your allies. But it's a very strong shield. Okay, it's definitely a very, very strong shield. It's got a 200 round magazine. It's got the catalyst here. It increases the arc shield's durability and partially reloads it if it's destroyed. I think the partial reload is just 100 rounds. As you see, a 200 round magazine, so it can reload 100 rounds, but also increasing the durability. Like, this is what makes it so strong. In PvE, PvP, sorry, you've probably seen people running around with this when they have a big blue bubble around them. This is what they're using. It will melt people. It kills very, very quickly. But of course, the trade-off is you have to have it fully spun up, and when it's fully spun up, you can't sprint, you can't move fast. You're kind of, you're slowed down. I would say, for a PvE rating, it's 3 out of 5. Again, it's not the most damage, it's not the least damage. It's got good ad clear potential. The shield is strong, not invincible, nothing crazy. It's a really middle of the line exotic, and in PvP activities, I'd say probably the same thing. It's a good option if you are maybe defending a flag. You pick up heavy and you're on the B flag, and then it's time to defend the B flag because a bunch of enemies are coming. You spin up that shield, you'll be able to last a little bit longer, but outside of that, like, you can't sprint with it very well. So I'd say it's like a 3 out of 5 in both PvE and PvP. Salvation's Grip. This weapon is really good. I love this weapon. Basically, it says it's a grenade launcher, but forget the whole grenade launcher thing. Okay, when you hold the trigger down for a couple, like a second, I don't know exactly how long the charge is, you will fire a stasis crystal pattern. It'll spawn 6 stasis crystals in kind of like a pyramid shape, with the small, like the pointy end towards you, and the pointy end will be wherever the first grenade hits. So what does that mean? Well, it's stasis energy. Okay, you can use this to freeze enemies, of course, because stasis crystals will freeze enemies. You can use this to block off doorways. Really, where its strength comes from is its stasis utility. You don't have to use this on a stasis subclass. You can use it on whatever subclass you want. And again, you can block doors, you can freeze enemies, you can stun unstoppable champions by freezing them, or I guess shattering them after they're frozen. But it's really strong when you do pair it with stasis. Its perk here, scatter shot. Sorry, whenever you shoots just a grenade launcher, like if you just tap the button, it will destroy stasis crystals. And of course, when you destroy stasis crystals, it'll also reload it from reserves. Nothing crazy. I don't ever really use this perk, to be honest. I just use this part down here. But yeah, it also got a catalyst that basically gives it Rhyme Stealer, so that when you destroy stasis crystals or defeat frozen targets, you get stacks of frost armor. This is a great weapon. I would say this is a 4 out of 5 in PvE. The only place this is going to struggle is against bosses that are not on the ground and walking. For example, Oryx or the Witness, something that's far away from you, this is going to have no business playing in these areas. But if it's a boss like Rainix, if it's a boss that's, large, like an ogre boss. I'm trying to think about ogre boss. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but an ogre boss, for example, it will break all those crystals at their feet, which deals a ton of damage. So I think 4 out of 5 is probably a good place to put this in PvE. In PvP, 1 out of 5. I mean, like, the chances of you killing somebody with this weapon, with a crystal pattern, is so small It's basically non-existent. It's a 1 out of 5 in PvP. Moving on, Eyes of Tomorrow. Now, this is a raid exotic. This is from Deepstone Crypt. Basically, what it does is it can track onto, I think, up to 4 targets at a time. Okay, so you aim down sight. Actually, I don't even think you have to aim down sights. You just look at 4 enemies, it will track them, and then when you shoot it, the rockets that come out of it will each track a different enemy, which is really good. Now, it did get a substantial tracking nerf a couple weeks or a couple months ago, several months ago, actually, I think. But it's still a really fun weapon. Yeah, it was really heavily used in Gambit because, again, you could track your 4 enemies, you could shoot the rockets up, and they would come down like a mortar strike, basically, which was a lot harder to avoid. It also does have this perk right here, and this is important to point out. If you kill 4 or more enemies, it will give you 1 ammo back. It'll reload the magazine. Reload the magazine does not mean from reserves. Like, it literally gives you ammo. This is the first ever theoretically infinite ammo rocket launcher in the game. Okay, as long as you can get 4 kills per volley, which that's not too hard with this weapon. But if you have a situation where ads are not super dense, yeah, you're gonna struggle. Now, in terms of boss damage, this weapon does not have boss damage. Each of the rockets deals substantially less damage to bosses. So I think that it does a little bit more damage than like a standard like legendary rocket launcher. But I would honestly just recommend using a standard legendary rocket launcher, saving your exotic slot for something else. But if you have your 2 weapons you absolutely love, and you want to throw something on, like if you have an area where there's high ad levels, like you could use this for potentially infinite ammo. But yeah, other than that though, I'd say it's probably a 3 out of 5 in PvE. Like, yes, infinite ammo sounds crazy, sounds great, but again, you have to get 4 kills. If one of those rockets misses, hits the environment, like, you won't get that ammo back. So 3 out of 5 PvE. And in PvP, I would give this probably a higher score. I'd say 4 out of 5 in PvP, especially if you can catch people not paying attention. You don't have to aim at an enemy to track it. Like, you just have to get them basically at the center of your reticle for like 0.2 seconds, and it will lock onto them. But yeah, that's Eyes of Tomorrow. I would say it's like a 3 out of 5 in PvE too. 3 out of 5 in PvE and 3 out of 5 in PvP. Lament. The Lament. This thing is a crazy sword. This has been through so many nerfs, and it is still such a powerful weapon. Basically, this is a sword where when you're guarding, and you attack, you will increase your damage. Every attack will give you a stack of what's called Banshee's Wail. Every light attack, that is, will give you a stack of Banshee's Wail up to ×9 stacks. ×9 stacks is going to give you substantially more damage. So basically, the thing you do with this weapon is you block, you swipe 2 or 3 times light attacks, then you do a heavy attack, and that heavy attack is a really cool kind of like flip style thing where you slam the blade into the ground. It looks really, really cool, but it also does a ton of damage, and it does have shield piercing capability. So, if you got your barrier colossus or, your barrier hobgoblins, whatever, you can break them with basically just 1 light attack from this while you're blocking. And again, you have to block to activate the shield piercing attack. But it's good. It also has this perk, Rev Consumption, which whenever you're hitting targets, it will heal you for a little bit, not a whole lot, but it gives you a little bit of health, which can be really nice, especially if you're doing a Stronghold Titan build. That is just going to make you basically invincible. And it has Tireless Blade, so every other kill will give you sword ammo. This weapon, oh man, I think for what it is, it deserves a spot at a 5 out of 5 in PvE activities. Again, like, it's a sword, so you're not going to be using it against every boss, but basically any boss that you can use a sword against, this is the option to use. Like, this is the best sword to use. It's got crazy good ad clear potential. I mean, it one-shots most ads. Of course, it's got Tireless Blade, so you'll be getting ammo back for that. It's got high health target potential, like champions and stuff like that. Like, it slices through champions. And of course, it's got boss damage. It's a 5 out of 5 in PvE. PvP, 1 out of 5. I mean, it's a sword. I don't really know what else to say. You're going to get almost... No. You will get 0 use out of Banshee's Wail in the Crucible. Okay, that's just how it is, because you have to land multiple hits. But even then, sword is still a one-shot kill. So it's a 1 out of 5 in PvE, but a 5 out of 5. 1 out of 5 in PvP, but a 5 out of 5 in PvE. Gjallarhorn, a classic, Destiny 1 classic. Basically, this rocket will fire a round that will, once it hits the target, will break up into 6 or 8 smaller, like little tracking projectiles that will attack the target again. So it deals more damage than the standard rocket launcher. Unfortunately, it's not like what was that other exotic we just talked about? Wardcliff Coil, where each rocket's gonna deal like, you know, a ton of damage. Like the smaller rockets deal much less damage. This is much more of a support exotic because of this perk right here, Pack Hunter. When you shoot this weapon, nearby allies will get the Pack Hunter buff, and then any of those allies who are using a non-exotic rocket launcher will get wolf pack rounds applied to that rocket shot. So if you're using this in a raid setting against a boss that's going to take explosive damage from rocket launchers, this thing will substantially increase your team's damage output, but as an individual, it's not that strong. It also, the catalyst here will increase the magazine size, and then final blows with Wolfpack rounds will spawn a faster, more powerful missile at the target's location. So again, a little bit of ad clear potential here. I would say this weapon is a 3 out of 5 in PvE activities. Again, it's only gets stronger as you have more teammates that are using legendary rocket launchers that you can pair with this. But by itself, it's not that great. It's in a similar boat as Lumina. Like if you have teammates that are using rocket launchers, it's a 5 out of 5. Legendary rocket launcher, it's a 5 out of 5. But if you have no teammates, or if your teammates use linear fusion rifles, it's like a 1 out of 5. So I think a comfortable middle ground is 3 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, probably like a 2 out of 5. The wolf pack rounds aren't going to kill with just one. Like you need multiple wolf pack rounds to hit an enemy in PvP to kill them. It does have tracking, but again, the tracking in PvE not necessarily the best, because if you're tracking and your enemy jumps, they can easily just move out of the way of the rocket. I'd say like a 2 out of 5 in PvP. 3 out of 5 in PvE, 2 out of 5 PvP. Parasites. This weapon is a grenade launcher. This is a unique grenade launcher. It has one shot in the magazine, and it literally fires a worm out of it. Okay, it shoots like a hive worm. Like, you know, you kill a hive, you see it drop the little worm sometimes. Yeah, it shoots a hive worm out of it, and it will deal more damage based on the number of kills that you have before. So as you're getting kills, you're building up stacks of what's called Worm's Hunger. You can get up to 20 stacks. At 20 stacks, this grenade launcher is going to deal a substantially more damage, like a ton of damage. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It also has this perk, worm byproduct. Taking damage from your own worm projectile in detonation empowers your weapons for a short time. This is a pretty nice little addition to it, because you can use this, like, say, like, you know, shoot it at a group of enemies, it explodes, it deals a ton of damage. If you take damage from that, you know, that worm, then your weapons get a 10-second damage boost. I think it's a 30%, maybe a 35% damage boost. It's a pretty substantial damage boost. Nothing like, you know, again, it's not applying to this weapon. I mean, I guess it technically does apply to this weapon, but, you know, you're gonna have to build up stacks of Worm's Hunger. So unless you can get 20 kills in like 5 seconds, you're not going to be using worm byproduct with this weapon very much. I would say in PvE activities, this is probably again a comfortable like 3 out of 5. Like, it's not a bad option, it's not a good option. It struggles in sustained DPS, but it excels tremendously at burst damage. Like if you have a situation where you only have 1 or 2 seconds to damage a boss, this thing would be 100% a go-to, because it will nuke that boss in one shot. Deal like, you know, like 300, 400,000 damage in just one shot, as long as you have times 20 stacks of Worm's Hunger. So I think, you know, it's a 1 out of 5 in some areas, a 5 out of 5 in some. So I think a comfortable 3 out of 5 is where I would put this weapon. And in PvP, I mean, you're probably gonna get a kill. It's like a 2 out of 5 in PvP. Like, you will get a kill if you shoot it at somebody. Like, the explosion radius is huge, especially if you're able to build a couple stacks of Worm's Hunger before you pull this bad boy out. But the explosion radius is massive and it deals a ton of damage. Like, you will get a kill with it, but I think you only get 1 shot from it. You might as well use a rocket launcher, which will travel faster, doesn't have a terrible arc. you get to shoot it from. So it's like a 1 out of 5. No, 2 out of 5 in PvP activities. Grand Overture. This is a machine gun, but it's a unique machine gun because it has a charge time. That's what it is down here. Basically, you charge it up for a little bit. Once it's fully charged, then it will shoot very slowly, 100 rounds per minute, but it shoots big damaging slugs. Then, as you're hitting with those slugs, you're building stacks of missiles. Missiles loaded is technically the name of it. These missiles, once you are at whatever your desired stack is, up to 20, you click and hold your reload button to load all those missiles in, and you can fire them off for free without using any ammo. Or if it does use ammo, it only uses 1 shot, but I'm pretty sure it's free. Anyways, this thing is substantial, again, for burst damage. Like, you can build up stacks of it by shooting at a boss, you know, or shooting enemies and stuff. And once you get to times 20 stacks, switch it to its missile launcher mode. And I mean, it dumps literally 20 missiles downrange. Those missiles deal a ton of damage. They have tracking on them. And of course, with the catalyst here, the missile explosions will blind combatants. And then if you kill an enemy with one of those missile explosions, it will also cause another explosion. It's tons of explosions. But this is a really, really strong option for burst DPS. Again, you have to build up the weapons, you know, stacks. So it has 20 rounds in the magazine. So basically you fire 20 shots off as long as you hit those 20 shots. If you miss a shot, it won't do anything. But if you hit 20 shots, you have 20 missiles loaded, then you can load the missiles in and dump on whatever it is you're trying to shoot. I would say this is, again, a comfortable, like, I'd say probably 4 out of 5 in PvE. It's very strong. This is a very strong option in PvP and PvE because of the missiles. PvP, not so much as a 1 out of 5 in PvP. I'm pretty sure it's at least a 2-shot kill with this thing, which is not good because its fire rate is really slow. But in PvE, I'd say it's a 4 out of 5 in PvE. Especially, like, if you're able to charge it up before a damage phase. Burst DPS is very strong. The sustained DPS is also pretty strong. Not as strong as the burst DPS, though. Heartshadow. This is one of the 2 heavy exotics that I do not have. It comes with the perk Exhumation. Heavy attacks made with full sword energy will turn you invisible and fire exploding void projectiles. It also has this perk Shot in the Dark here. Hitting a target while remaining invisible grants this weapon increase of damage for a brief duration. I've never read this, so I'm reading it just now. Hitting a target with these weapons projectiles while Shot in the Dark is active will weaken them. Where this weapon has its strong suit is in its void utility. You can turn invisible with it. Similar to Rat King, but you don't have to have a kill to do this. You just do a heavy attack and it'll turn you invisible. It has a catalyst, apparently. I don't know what the catalyst does, though, to be honest. But also it does have the void, you know, synergy of weakening as well, which if you're building into void, this is a pretty good option. Void Hunter especially. Just because of all the ways that you have to turn invisible, stay invisible, exotics that synergize with invisibility, stuff like that. But yeah, I would say in PvE activities, this is probably like a 3 out of 5. Again, you're not using it because it has crazy DPS power. Like, you're using it, again, more so because of its utility. But the utility that it does have is very strong. And in PvP, I'll based on my experience, 1 out of 5. I've never seen anybody use this weapon. I know that you can get a 1-shot kill, but again, like, they're not infinite range. Like, the enemy has to be pretty close. I'd say it's like a 2 out of 5 in PvP and a 3 out of 5 in PvE. Deterministic Chaos. This is a machine gun, 360, the only 360 round per minute exotic machine gun in the game. Basically, as you're holding down the trigger, every 4th shot will cause volatility. Okay, and you have to be firing full auto. Every 4th shot will cause volatility, and then every 16th shot will cause a weakening effect, which is, I mean, it's, again, void synergy. It's there. If you like volatility, this is an option. If you like weakening, this is an option. I would say this is a 2 out of 5 in PvE. Yes, it does have void synergy, but the void synergy is really it's just not that good. The only reason it's not getting a 1 out of 5 is because it does have anti-barrier on it, which is nice. But it's not, again, like, you might use this for support, you know, oh, I'm gonna shoot shots with Deterministic Chaos to weaken the boss, but at the same time, you can just use a Void Hunter Smoke Bomb to do the same thing. 2 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, same thing. I'd say it's a 1 out of 5 in PvP because 360s aren't in the best spot for PvP, and this is a 360. And yeah, that's all I can really say about Deterministic Chaos. Winterbites. This is the first ever stasis glaive. It's also the only heavy glaive. And this thing actually is kind of crazy, especially in stasis builds. But it has this this perk here, BFG, Big Frigid Glaive. Fires a large ball of energy that locks onto nearby targets and freezes them. Basically, you shoot a stasis ball out of the end of this thing. And as it travels, it's going to shoot towards enemies. It's going to instantly freeze them, which is really, I mean, that's pretty good. But what makes this weapon truly unique and really good is this perk right here, Weighted Edge. This weapon's melee attacks deal increased damage and slow targets when loaded with ammo. So when you have ammo, you're going to be applying slow stacks to anything you're meleeing. This is good because this synergizes very well with some of our frost armor aspects. Like you could put on, oh goodness me, what is that? What is the exotic? Icefall Mantle. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name. You can put on Icefall Mantle and absolutely go to town with this thing, constantly healing, constantly having high stacks of frost armor up, and you're just meleeing everything. And of course, it does way more damage than the standard glaive. In PvE activities, I would probably give this like a 3 out of 5. If you're not building in a stasis. If you're building in a stasis, it can be much higher. I give it a 3 out of 5 because it's still a glaive. Glaives aren't in the best spot right now. It's, you know, not anything crazy, but it does have the ability to freeze and slow targets without having to have stasis equipped, which is really nice. And in PvP, just don't use it in PvP. It's, again, it's a 1 out of 5. Like, yes, you can, like, theoretically freeze enemies, but it's probably not going to happen, and it's still a glaive. So it's a 1 out of 5 in PvP and a 3 out of 5 in PvE. Dragon's Breath. This is one we talked about in our Monument to Lost Light exotics. This is right out the gates a 5 out of 5 in PvE. This thing is very strong. Basically, the rockets that you fire out of it will spew fire behind it. Then it will embed itself in a target, and based on the number of stacks of composite propellant that you have, which we'll talk about that in just 1 second, it will deal more damage for longer, causing scorches, which will cause ignitions, and it's just crazy. Basically, the way composite propellant works is you stow this weapon, and over time it builds up those stacks. Once it gets to 5 stacks, it will automatically reload the weapon, which is really nice. And I think also, is it this one? No, it's this. With the catalyst, any kill that you get with this weapon will drop fire sprites. It says weapon causes them to periodically drop fire sprites. I'm pretty sure every kill you get with it will drop fire sprites. So if you shoot into a big group of ads, like, you're gonna have a bunch of fire sprites that you can pick up to basically instantly charge your grenade. This weapon is a very strong damage option because it's a fire and forget. You shoot it, you put it up, you switch to your supremacy or whatever other weapon you're using, and just let it do its thing. It's going to detonate ignitions. It's going to scorch targets. It's going to deal substantial damage. The big downside of this weapon is the fact that it can kill you. Like, if you get close to that rocket, if you shoot an enemy that's, you know, 3 feet away from you, you're going to die because it's the munitions that it spits out deal a lot of damage to the players. So just be wary of that. But this weapon, outside of that, I mean, it's a phenomenal option in PvP, in PvE activities. PvP, not so much. It's a 1 out of 5 in PvE. In PvP, good luck getting utility out of it. Not saying you can't. Like, you could theoretically shoot it on, you know, a zone or something like that, and it'll spit fire out and it'll kill players that walk into it. But again, it's one of those things, like, players can see it from a mile away. So why would I go near it? Just wait till it fizzles out. 5 out of 5 PvE, 1 out of 5 PvP. And lastly, this is the latest exotic heavy. I, again, don't have this weapon. This is a Microcosm. This is the first ever, for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's the first ever heavy trace rifle. It is also the first ever kinetic heavy weapon, which makes this a very, very unique weapon. Basically, it fires a beam of kinetic light, deals massive bonus damage to shields. I wouldn't worry too much about this. Its main, like, the main draw to it is the fact that it's a trace rifle in the heavy slot. Its other perk here, Parasite imbuement. When you get final blows, it will give you extra super energy. And then whenever your super ends, it gets a bonus to its damage. This is a really strong option in a lot of DPS phases, especially ones where you can hit crits, because you can pop your, like, one-off super, like, you know, your Twilight Arsenal or your Celestial Nighthawk Golden Gun, and then as soon as you pop your super, you get a massive damage boost with this thing, and you just beam enemies down. I would say a 4 out of 5 in PvE based on what I know. Again, I don't have it, but based on what I know, I'd say it's a safe bet to say this is probably a 4 out of 5 in PvE activities. It's strong against ads, it's strong against bosses, and then for PvP, it's very strong in PvP. I know I get melted by it all the time. It's a heavy trace rifle, so it's dealing a lot of damage to players. It can melt them pretty quick. I think probably a 3 out of 5 in PvE. I think they're just better options, but this wouldn't be a terrible option to use in PvP. But a 4 out of 5 in PvE, 3 out of 5 in PvP. And yeah, with that being said, that is all of our exotic heavy weapons explained and rated. So I mean, I think I got everything covered in here. But of course, as usual, if I missed anything or if I forgot to mention something about one of these exotics, feel free to sound off in the comments below about what I missed, or just tell me your insight on these weapons and stuff like that. But yeah, with that being said, I do appreciate you coming over here and watching this video. It was a lot of fun to make, just like the last two were. And yeah, with that being said, have a good night, all that good stuff. Do me a favor, like the video, it helps the channel a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, conversations, debates, discussions, all that good stuff. And do me one more favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen here, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. Guys, we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.